All right, welcome back to the Onyx Report, people. I hope folks are doing as well as possible in these crazy times, most particularly in regard to you and your family's health. I want to send out some positive energy and my best wishes to you and yours as far as that. And then, of course, navigating this economy. And unfortunately, those things in the midst of this pandemic are tied together. So again, the Onyx Report, we definitely will be taking calls after the first half hour for our guest today. I'll tell you a little bit more about him in a quick moment. Support the show. You can go on to CashApp and look for $ DrTHasanJ or PayPal THasanJ, or on Patreon. And on Patreon, I also have a film review series for my $20 a month patrons, where we basically kind of give you some talking points and some historical periods to help you have dialogue with your own children, most particularly your sons, in regard to black masculinity, manhood, and issues that pertain to that. So that's on patreon.com. Just look up THasan-Johnson, and that's for my $20 a month patrons. So today we're going to cover a couple of things, which, as you guys know, I like to kind of start with some current events just to kind of put us on track with where things are on this April 29th. And what I like to start with is just an overview of Fresno County. According to their public health page on the County of Fresno website, I'm not sure the accuracy of these numbers, especially considering that there's still a dearth, a number of tests given. There are people who are suffering at home who've never gone into the hospital, and unfortunately people who are passing away. But all considering, Fresno County is reporting that there's a total of 538 cases of COVID-19 in the area, 44 of which are travel related, 206 of which are close contact, 238 are community spread, and there are 50 cases under investigation. So we've had about total 7 deaths, and that's been about since last week, and about 97 people who have ever been hospitalized for it. And it's also reporting 202 people have recovered. So that's what's been reported. I truly hope that things continue to get better as we transition into a period where we are about to go back to work on one level or another across the country. My hopes for the best for people. So couple of things. Let's see. One of the main cases I wanted to bring to your attention is an article on Black+Disabled+Male, and the title is "Black Man Running Through Georgia Neighborhood Killed by 2 White Men Who Thought He Was a Burglary Suspect. No one has been charged or arrested in connection with the killing." Now that's of the time of this article, which was posted 2 days ago, again on Black+Disabled+Male, article written by Alyssa Curtis. So I haven't checked to see if there's been any updated news, but if you're just hearing about it, you might want to look into it. This is about Ahmaud Arbery, was believed to be just jogging in a quiet suburban neighborhood when he was pursued, shot, and killed by a white resident and their father, who suspected him of committing robberies in the area. Now his family is worried the case won't get the attention they believe it deserves because of social distancing orders. So this sounds very familiar. Not only has this been happening for years, generations even, but this sounds very much like a case that set the country on fire a number of years ago, and really kicked activism to a whole new level that we may not have seen since the late 80s, early 90s protests against South Africa. So at the end of the day, we need to keep the spirit, keep the energy of protest going, as at the end of the day, these brothers, in many instances, and sisters are still being killed arbitrarily, and black men still find themselves dying at rates between 200 and 300 per year at police and vigilante violence. So look into that case and see if there's any way you can support. The next up is an article on CNN, believe it or not, written by one Chauncey Alcorn, April 28th. This was posted yesterday, and it's about black barbershop owners divided over coronavirus social distancing, right? And so one of the things the article kind of points out is the way in which black small business owners are suffering, especially business owners that need to come in direct contact with their clients, There are some who have been dying when they have tried to work. There are others who are suffering financially when they haven't been able to, and the whole question of what's going to happen. Now, this is particularly important because in terms of black businesses, we know that over 90% of black businesses have one employee, and that in and of itself creates a problem, especially when support mechanisms for black business or for small businesses in relation to how the federal government defines it generally refers to businesses with around 500 employees. So in many ways, this leaves black businesses kind of out in the cold and creates a dangerous kind of precedent in terms of where we sit. And I want to shout out my colleague, activist Nyota Uhuru, who makes a beautiful point in regard to this article, where she says, not just barbers, don't get me started on the whole small business loan fake out they do when it comes to black businesses. They don't get bailed out. They get locked out of the bailout process. A lot of black business owners are not going to come back from this. That's the least of it. What will the impact be for black Main Street business people in 50 to 100 years? How much wider the wealth gap? We may get stuck in a hole we may never get out of, and black leaders are not talking tangibles, reparations, or a black agenda. We've seen this kind of thing before, especially in response to a crisis. Like if we think back a little bit to New Orleans and we think about what happened in terms of the floods, the breaking of the levees, fast forward a couple years from that, and there's an absence of black faces. So in other words, there was a way in which tragedy was used to really export a whole community and really kind of revise the entire economic face of New Orleans. So there are ways in which tragedies, world occurrences are used in such fashion, and it could very well seem like this pandemic might be doing the same in regard to black folk. So in regard to black business, there's definitely an alarm for making sure we're supported, because at the end of the day, many are losing their jobs. Last I checked, there were over 26 million, that was as of last week, who filed for unemployment. There are still whole corporations, whole businesses that haven't officially fired their employees. They've only been they've really just not been allowed hours. So they've not been fired, therefore many of them can't file fully for unemployment. Some, depending on the state, can partially file for partial unemployment, but at the end of the day, because they haven't been released yet, they're technically considered employed. So that 26 million is probably very low in terms of the impact, and the percentage of black folk that fall in that framework are likely to be fairly high in terms of employment. So there's a lot on the table that we need to stay conscious of. There are two articles also, one in the FresnoBee.com newspaper that talks about employee in Fresno's Foster Farm has the coronavirus, the company confirms, and another article on NBC News about Tyson Foods chairman warning that the food supply chain is breaking. So these two, one local, one national, kind of speak to one of the next issues on the table that many have been concerned about, but not necessarily talking about as often as I would have suspected, and that is the breaking down of the food chains and what that actually does in terms of grocery stores, larger stores from Walmart to Costco and so on and so forth. If the supply lines are broken down, if the factories are closing down where they process everything from meat to other goods, if employees are not able to work because of environmental safeties not being provided, that kind of thing can have a domino effect, and it's questionable as to how far we may be in that at this very moment. So, please be aware of that and try and do your best to kind of do what you can to prepare for whatever alternatives, whatever issues might present themselves. That's about all many of us can do, because we are a society that is very much dependent upon systems and structures. Whereas, in my grandmother's era, and I remember this growing up, every family had a yard where they were growing their own vegetables. I remember, my grandmother and my grandfather, every time we would visit, they would take us out in the garden and show us what they were growing. Being Generation X, I would say mine was the generation that didn't really replicate those practices. And in many ways, we're starting to see at least some of the fallout from that. And that's not to say that overnight you'd be able to support yourself with whatever garden you had in your backyard, but at the very least, the skill set would have been maintained. the skill set of how to grow your own food that goes back to slavery, goes back to you know, the various types of labor, particularly agricultural labor that we had to perform from Reconstruction on. Definitely sharecropping. Those are the things our grandparents held on to, and by the time we get to Generation X, we lost a lot of that. So if that is a skill that you have, you know, I would urge people to find ways to communicate that best you can to people who might be interested in trying it, because it is not something that is as widely practiced in the Black community as it used to, and we definitely can see the need for it. Last up, let me see here. Where did I put it? Just had it up a moment ago, and I moved it off my screen, which means that it will probably pop up as soon as the show is over. That's okay. So we'll just go from there. We'll transition here. So anyway, skipping ahead, just be mindful, folks. Keep your head on a swivel, and I wish you the best as far as that. Today, I want to introduce my guest, one Leroy F. Moore Jr. He's the founder of Crip Hop Nation. Since the 1990s, has written the column Illin' and Chillin' for Poor Magazine. He's one of the founding members of the National Black Disability and activist around police brutality against people with disabilities. So he's the founding member of National Black Disability. Leroy has started and helps start organizations like Disability Advocates of Minorities Organization, to Sins, Invalid, to Crip Hop Nation. His cultural work includes film documentary Where is Hope, police brutality against people with disabilities, spoken word CDs, poetry books, and children's books, Black Disabled Art, History 101, published by Quetzalcoatl Justice Press. I may have mispronounced that. His graphic novel, Crip Hop Graphic Novel Issue 1, Brown Disabled Young Woman Superhero Brings Disability Justice to Hip Hop, was published by Poor Press 2019 and 2020. Under Poor Press, Leroy has published Black Disabled Ancestors. Moore has traveled internationally, networking with other disabled activists and artists. Moore has wrote, sang, and collaborated to do music videos on Black disabled men. And you can find him on www.criphopnation, Crip with a K, criphopnation.com, www.blackdisability.org, www.poormagazine.org/crip_hop, twitter.com/criphopnation, and on Facebook under Leroy F. Moore Jr. So I'd like to welcome Leroy Moore to the Onyx Report. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, man. Thank you for coming on, man. I appreciate it. I know you're busy. Well, I'd like to start at the beginning when I interview, because I want people to know how my guests got to the work that they're at now. So if you could tell us, where were you born, and what would you say were the earliest stages of being introduced to the kind of work you would eventually do?
Okay, thanks a lot. So I was born in the coldest place on earth. It's not the North Pole, it's Buffalo, New York.
Okay.
Buffalo, New York, before, this whole climate change was the coldest. I mean, my mother lost her car in a snowstorm for 5 months back in the 70s. So yeah, so that's hardcore. So how I got into my work of race and disability, especially Black people and disability, go back to 1979, and me and two other Black disabled boys went upstairs to my room and we did a letter campaign. So letter campaign back in 1979 is with pen and paper, no computers. So we wrote everybody from Jesse Jackson to Urban League to NAACP saying, where is Black disabled boys, Black disabled anything? And we got back foreign letters saying that there's nothing out there. So these funds came from PhDs, came from, EDs and nonprofits, came from a lot of Black organizations. So that led me to the work that I'm doing now under Hip Hop, in all my advocacy throughout the years, especially police brutality against Black disabled people. I started my own nonprofit in the 90s for people of color with disabilities, and also started a nonprofit with a friend of mine, Sins and Ballot, and I left that a couple of years to really concentrate on Black community and disability, especially Black disabled men. So, a couple of years, no, this is only a year ago, me and Keith Jones and Lateef McLeod and Otis Smith started an online video monthly conversation called Black Disabled Men Talk.
Okay.
So we do that every month. And so here I am, 53 years old, still trying to knock on doors of Black organizations, Black Studies, Hip Hop Studies, everything, because Black disabled issues are not seen as studyable. But if you look through history, I always say that Black disabled men started the whole music industry. If you go back to, freak shows, it's mainly Black disabled men.
Yes.
They come out with the blues, of course, Black blind men. So, the history is there, but a lot of PhDs in Black Studies don't see disability as the thing to study.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I noticed you've done some work with Dr. Tommy Curry on that, who has been doing work on Black men and disability. So I've noticed you had some inroads there.
Yes. I interviewed him twice. So far.
Okay, beautiful. Can you speak to, if you're comfortable, the type of disability that you grappled with or coming in?
Yeah. I was born with cerebral palsy. So the story of mine, I'm also a poet, so I do a lot of poetry. I did this poem about my birth because I was born, a healthy, quote unquote healthy boy, and my mom took me home in Buffalo, New York, and that's when I had a nosebleed and I stopped breathing. And back then, the snow was so high that no ambulance, no car was coming. So my father was a football player, back then it was the Buffalo Bills. So he took me in his arms and ran to the hospital in Buffalo, New York during the winter. So,
Wow. And what did they say when you got to the hospital? What happened?
Yeah, I got to the hospital. Of course, I was, blue. I was dead. So because of that, they, tried to save my life, and they did. My father pushed the skinny white doctor back into the operating room. Then he came back and said, "Okay, your son is alive, but your son is going to be disabled. He's going to be a vegetable." And my father, kissed this white man and said, "Thank you." And the doctor's like, did you understand what I'm saying? Your son is going to be a vegetable.
But he was just happy you were alive.
Yeah.
So when you say he pushed the doctor when you first got there?
Yeah, he pushed the doctor back in the operating room. The doctor came out and said, "Okay, your son is dead." And my, football playing father, grabbed the white doctor and pushed him back in the operating room. He said, "Come back with good news."
Wow. So on one end, he ran you, carrying you to the hospital, and then he basically wouldn't let the doctor leave the room until you were alive. Wow. Man, you about to have me teared up in here. That's powerful. That is powerful, especially when we hear about how toxic masculinity is, and yet you hear a story like that. I'm sorry, wow, that's powerful.
Yeah,
So,
and especially when you always hear that, especially if the son is disabled, you always hear that the father is gone, so that twists the whole story,
And all he needed to hear was you were alive. He wasn't fazed about anything else.
No, he wasn't.
That's powerful. So you started doing this activist work as a child, really?
Yeah, my father was closely associated to the Black Panthers. So I say that I was born on the protest line.
That's right. Me too.
So,
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had no choice but to be an activist. Yeah.
So this is something that you kind of inherited from your father and the larger Black Panther movement.
Well, both my father and both my mother. My mother was really, the key. She advocated for all my services and stuff. My father, I went to those house meetings, those Black Panther house meetings, and that's when I saw,
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so tell us a little bit about so this was in Buffalo. Okay, so where did you end up, transitioning from Buffalo?
Yeah, so that's in Buffalo. So I really grew up in New York City, in Connecticut.
Okay.
So I grew up, New York City, Manhattan, back when hip hop was on the street corner. So I saw hip hop grow up, in Hartford, Connecticut, first Massachusetts, Manchester, Connecticut, then Hartford, Connecticut.
Wow. Okay. And tell us about some of the activist work you did, during that transitional time after Buffalo, going into these different spaces. What kind of work did you find yourself doing?
Yeah, I like I said, being part of my father's meeting, I really got into police brutality, work, and this was in the 80s. This is way before Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
And in those meetings, they were talking about Black disabled men being shot by police. So I got involved with that. I really saw the difference between being Black and disabled and being white and disabled, because a lot of white disabled advocacy groups were coming to me to join, but I said, are you dealing with Black issues like police brutality? And they said no. I was like, well, how can I come, join you to protest curb cuts when Black disabled men are being shot, just coming outside?
Wow. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because most people wouldn't associate being Black, disabled, and male with police brutality. Can you talk a little bit about, what kinds of things you've seen and advocated against?
Yeah, well, like I said, I was in my father's meeting, so they talked about these cases. They talked about police brutality in New York and cases of Black disabled men being tipped over in their wheelchairs. This in the 80s. So hearing these stories constantly when I was growing up, I was like, wow. And my first involvement in a whole movement around police brutality was bumpers, Eleanor bumpers in New York. where it was an elderly disabled woman that got shot by police.
Mm.
So that's when that's when I really got involved and, you know, started protesting and going to police commission meetings and, you know, really talking about the disability angle, because a lot of times, even today, that the disability angle is not talked about in police brutality activism. You can see the whole Black Lives Matter, they don't never talk about disability.
Mm.
So although 70% of the cases are, you know, disability cases that are Black disabled, you know, men. So yeah.
Well, let's delve into that a little bit. First of all, how would you define disability? Because I think most people have, you know, like maybe even a one-dimensional kind of outlook on it. But what does disability mean in your work?
Well, you know, we have laws that, you know, describe disability, you know, under the Americans with Disability Act, you know, there's a legal law, you know, that describes disability, you know, that limits, you know, life movements, you know,
Okay.
walking, seeing, learning, yeah.
Okay. And so would that include, you know, psychological or mental issues?
Yeah, mental health.
Mental health. Mm-hmm.
You know, people that have developmental disabilities, like, you know, Down syndrome, you know, even you know, cancer, and, you know, sickle cell is really big in the Black community.
Yes.
Sickle cell, you know, yeah.
Yeah, my wife passed away from sickle cell complicated issues. So I hear you. But you can talk about this, you know, in a whole different way. You know, like we go back to slavery. Most of us don't think about disability in relation to, you know, Black community and slavery.
Exactly. Thank you.
How would you do that? How can you make sense of that for people who've never thought about that connection?
Exactly. That really blows my mind around Black studies. I just don't understand why Black studies don't connect with disability scholars, you know. Mm-hmm. But, you know, of course, as we know, under slavery, you had to have, you know, a physically fit kind of body. And if you didn't, you know, you were dead, you know. A lot of Black disabled slaves were thrown overboard. Mm-hmm. You know, before even getting to, you know, quote unquote, the U.S. Mm-hmm. You know, so and then also on the positive side, and there's a positive side. You know, a lot of hip hop artists say that, you know, the Dozens, if you play the Dozens were a group of disabled slaves.
Mm.
You know, so we can say that hip hop, you know, has a disability element going all the way back to the Dozens.
Okay. I can definitely see what you mean there. And then we're not even, and that would, so that would also include, you know, Black people who were, you know, crippled and harmed as punishment during slavery, would it not?
Yeah.
People who had to live with those, that, you know, after that, right?
Yeah, and usually, you know, to correct you, usually, you know, the inside word for, you know, disabled community is you know, the C word, cripple, but we don't use that outside of our community. Okay. And that's the thing about one term I came up with, is called Black Ableism. Mm-hmm. You know, Black ableism is killing a lot of Black disabled youth. You know, we are seeing that the Black community is useless when it comes to Black disabled people because of Black ableism.
Can you expand on that? What do you mean?
Yeah, well, what I mean is that, you know, there's all kinds of isms, racism, sexism, Black ableism is when Black non-disabled people discriminate against Black disabled people, and not being aware of the changing of terminology. In 2020, in a lot of Black communities still use handicap. The term has been out since the 70s. So all of that, Black ableism, comes from, Black people not recognizing their ableist tendency when it comes to disability. We see that a lot in hip hop, and yeah.
Well, and I appreciate the correction. I'm familiar with ableism. I've just never heard it applied again to slavery. You know what I mean? So when you talk about having limbs removed, being castrated, things of that nature, I've not heard the terminology applied to that. So, usually if I hear anybody talking about ableism, it's usually within the last 20 to 30 years, but seldom do I hear it being applied, in terms of different centuries. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And go back to slavery, and I think that's one reason that I say that the Black community needs a national Black disabled campaign. Because we took up the slave masters' thinking around disability under slavery. So we have today a lot of Black people saying, you can overcome your disability. It's like saying I'm going to overcome my race. It doesn't make sense, It doesn't make sense, and we are still in the medical model when it comes to disability. There's a lot of models that the disability community goes through, and the Black community is still in the medical charity model when it comes to disability. So the medical model is like, you're something to be fixed or you overcome it.
I see. Right.
So, and the charity model is, we'll just throw charity at you and see you as a full person.
I see.
So a lot of Black disabled people grow up today are not being proud of their heritage of being Black and disabled. They always try to overcome it. It's like you can't overcome one of your identities. It just leads them to a one-way road that's totally left alone.
Wow. Well, you went in a direction that I would say most would never anticipate. You actually started delving into popular culture. And, can you talk a little bit about Crip Hop Nation, talk a little bit about Illin' and Chillin' for Poor Magazine? How did these projects come about? And I'm especially interested in National Black Disability. Talk to us about, how those came about and what you do.
Well, I go back to my youth. It's all about my activism, and my parents always taught me to really think critically about everything. And I think that's what's missing in today's society. You don't think critically about nothing, So anyway, with that in mind, when I got into activism, it's like, where's my Black disabled brothers and sisters? When I saw hip hop on the corner, it's like, where's Black disabled hip hop artists? So I always had those questions in mind. And when I got older, I started to put those questions into action, especially coming out of working at nonprofits and seeing Black disabled people getting passed over their services, jobs, and everything. Matter of fact, one example one experience that me and my friend did. We had two people going to a disability organization to get services. One was white, the other one was black. Both of them dressed to the T's. Both of them had resumes, all that. The white guy got in there. He's sitting there for an hour. Came back with an offer of a job. Came back with services. Black guy was in there for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Came back with nothing. And that experience taught me, it's like, okay, I can't go back to my job. I need to start something new.
Wow.
And then that's when I started disability advocacy of my minorities organization, and that lasted for 5 years. I got sick of writing grants all day. And I really got into my cultural work. And that's when hip hop started, and that's when my poetry started. And also I met Ford Magazine. Ford Magazine taught me about, poverty issues, and of course, Black disabled boys and men had the highest unemployment rate in all kinds of records.
Wow.
Since the 80s. This is almost like 90%. 90%. So all of those came to the forefront, and that's when after my nonprofit really got into radio. I was in radio, and one show that we did was around disability and hip hop. And after I came back home from that radio, I got flooded with calls.
I bet.
And emails. And the emails coming from Africa, Germany, everywhere. So I was like, okay, let's start Crip Hop.
Wow. So what is Crip? Break it down. What is Crip Hop specifically?
So Crip Hop is an international network of hip hop artists and musicians with disabilities. So it started with myself, Keith Jones, Rob Denoy's Temple. Matter of fact, Rob Denoy's Temple just passed away a couple of days ago.
Wow.
So it started with 3 Black disabled men. And we were all activists, and we said, we want to see ourselves in hip hop. So that's how it started. Now it's been 12 years. We've been in the UK, we've been in South Africa, we've been all over the US. It's an educational platform. It's not a label. We do advocacy, and we put out music, and we also put out educational tools.
Well, first, let me back up and say my condolences to your co-founder, friend you mentioned. That's powerful.
Yeah, and he was the DJ and the keyboardist for the Sugar Hill game. So,
oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So wow. Okay. So you developed Crip Hop Nation. You're getting international attention. People are writing you from all over the world. What happens next? And what time frame are we talking? What year did you develop Crip Hop Nation?
This was 2005, 2006. Yeah.
Okay.
And before Crip Hop Nation, like I said, Disability Advocates of Minorities Organization, and of course, Ford Magazine. At the same time, I got involved with the New Jersey Minorities with Disability Coalition with Jane Dunham, and then she started the National Black Disability Coalition. So I was there when that started, So the years, flow in together, but yeah.
Yeah. So, National Black Disability. Am I pronouncing
that? National Black Disability Coalition.
Coalition, okay. Tell us about that.
So the National Black Disability Coalition started with Jane Dunham, myself, and a couple more other people. Jane Dunham was working in New Jersey with a nonprofit statewide disability organization, but always took Black issues to the court. Really, made the organization, face Black disability issues, and she just got tired of always, banging, her head against the wall. So, we started the National Black Disability Coalition.
And for people who might want to get in contact, first, can you tell us what they can expect from the National Black Disability Coalition, and how can they reach you?
Yeah, you can go online, just Google National Black Disability Coalition. It's me, Jane Dunham, and a couple more other people. Our website is the main thing that we do. Put out resources. We put out articles. Jane Dunham has a history of working with legislators. When she was in New Jersey, she started to find legislation that really deals with Black disability issues. But now, because we're older, we're really, putting, some of our aids in the website. So that, and also, this year, Jane was a part of a Black Disabled Summit in Detroit. So yeah, we support Black disabled people, in cities that are trying to organize.
Okay. And now we have about 5 minutes left, but I definitely want to hear about the work, because you mentioned having a column in Poor Magazine, but then also a graphic novel. Can you talk a little bit about those two things?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is the column started in the 90s. It was the first column of its kind dealing with race and disability. And the first article was the LA police, the LAPD shooting of Margaret L. Mitchell, a Black woman with mental health disabilities.
Okay.
So we started the column with that. The column is still going on now. Now Hip Hop does a column. And Poor Magazine has been kicking butt. I mean, they really do radical organizing. They're building houses. They had their own school. They had their own radio station. And they've been doing this from the ground up with very little funding. So that's Poor Magazine. And then Poor Magazine has a press, which is interesting because I've always wanted a Black press to publish my book, but a lot of what I come to find out, a lot of Black presses don't want to deal with disability. Once again, that Black ableism comes up once again. So, thank God that Poor Magazine has a press that put out my graphic novel.
Okay.
Yeah, and the graphic novel deals with gentrification in New York, and it deals with this disabled Black young woman that's trying to get into, the local hip hop scene, but because of ableism, she don't see herself until she goes on the internet and sees hip hop, and she gets inspired, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've definitely met some young superheroes like that. Shout out to Miss Marissa. So I applaud the work you've done, and it's amazing, man, how much you've gotten done, and especially on a subject that it doesn't seem like you've had a lot of people really rally around to the extent that there should. So what would you say to people about the importance of ableism, about the importance of the work you're doing? What would you say needs to be done differently, and what people should be doing?
Differently, I think people need to come off of everything starts with a £4 decent grant. That's not a movement. A movement starts with the people. Black studies started in the community. It didn't start at college. It started,
Absolutely.
in the community, and that's how we're gonna ground Black disabled men, Black disabled artists. We gotta ground it first in our community. So that means going back to the community, and what I say, re-teaching. You have to split down the negative teaching that the Black community has been getting for decades around disability. So you have to split that down, then rebuild them back up with, Black disabled education.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank my guest, Leroy Moore, for coming in, for speaking to us. I really appreciate your time, brother, and the work that you do. I am here to tell you, brothers, we are not criminals by birth, perennial rapists, incapable intellects, man-children, sperm donors, child support wellsprings, success objects, walking phalluses, ATM machines, lottery tickets, unpaid bodyguards, interchangeable stepfathers, child discipline proxies, unpaid repairmen, workhorses, or any other socially accepted dehumanizing stereotype. We are thinkers, inventors, innovators, leaders, fathers, and men. Embrace your humanity, know your worth, and extend your time, attention, and resources only to those who genuinely respect you. And remember, your worth is not defined by meeting other people's narcissistic, selfish, and unrealistic needs. You define your worth. Peace.